everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mentors on Tap. We thought this week we'd try to do a little giving back and talk about some of the mentors that have shaped our lives and pointed us in various directions that have put us where we are today. So, Doc, who's one of your first mentors you can remember?
Well, I'm going to be real obvious on my first one, my dad. My dad taught me a lot of things, like most of our dads do, but he taught me the single biggest lesson I think that I've ever learned was to think about the ramifications before you say or do anything. Because everything has got to, whether it's something you did or something you could have done and didn't do, there's always consequences. And,
Right.
if you don't think about the fact that what you say is going to piss somebody off or hurt somebody, once the words are out there, some action, what it might cause, and think about even off the wall, really obscure possibilities. That way you're not surprised and you've got a contingency plan in mind if that does go wrong. And that is probably the lesson that has served me the best over the years.
It's a good lesson to learn. I'm going to
Yep.
cheat. I'm going to skip my dad. He's been a huge part of my life off and on over the years. And, that's an easy one. I'll let you take the easy one. My first real mentor is going to be in high school, probably one of my high school teachers. It always seems to come back to a teacher for a lot of us. I had a teacher in high school that tended to grade you on your potential, not on how you actually did. So, you could be in my case, it was a drafting class or a series of classes I took for 4 years. And, I designed the addition to his house as my senior project. So I obviously knew what I was doing at the time, but I still couldn't get any better than a B plus out of his class. Occasionally I would get an A minus, and it's like, I don't understand. He's like, well, you're capable of doing so much more than what you're doing. At the amount of effort you're putting out, you're doing better than pretty much everybody else in class, but you can do better. And since you're leaving so much unfinished as far as what you can personally do, this is the grade you get. And it kind of, really helped hammer home between him and my dad where that work ethic comes from. It's like, yeah, you could coast along at 85, 90% and beat 85 or 90% of all the people out there. But then when you take a look at people like Gary Vaynerchuk or Casey Neistat, those are the guys finishing out that last 5%. And, that's why they're where they are. They don't stop at 90% or 95%. They go, balls out 100% all the time, every time. And that's tough. It's a hard thing to do. It's real easy to come up with an excuse to cut back 10% and still be doing really well. It's like, well, I'm doing pretty good. I can kick back a little bit, but that's how you end up getting behind and chasing after things. So that was a huge, huge lesson I learned from him before I even got out of school. Uh-oh, I lost you. Did you mute yourself?
I did.
There you are.
I had a high school teacher too that had a big impact on me. Not so much informing the way I would be later in life, but he saw me. I was going down the wrong road. I was a real shithead, in trouble right and left. I didn't even do the bare minimum. I just didn't care. I was failing classes. I was going to get kicked out of school. Okay.
Right.
And my sophomore year of high school, he grabbed me up by the shorts and drugged me into the physics class when I was taking the easiest course lineup I could possibly grab. He pulled me into physics and put me in charge of the lab. First thing I had to do was inventory everything. I had to give him a solid inventory of what I had. Then he passed me some catalogs, and I had to give him a budget of what I would need to get in order to bring the lab up to snuff. And then he went and got the money and made me order the stuff. And by the time he got done with, he totally turned me around, got my head out of my butt, and I had to have 240 credits to graduate high school. And by the end of my junior year, I had 360.
There you
But
go.
I couldn't graduate early because you had to have 4 years of PE and you had to have 4 years of civics. So I had to come my senior year and take civics and PE. But
Oh,
Robin Boys was his name. He was a retired rear admiral, U.S. Navy, that got out, and he had taught at nuclear power school under Admiral Rickover, and got out and decided he wanted to go into teaching, and started teaching at the high school level.
hmm.
And what this guy didn't know about physics couldn't be taught. I mean, he was unbelievable. But and he was a lot of fun. He was just a Mr. Cotter sort of guy, you know, kind of a bit of a clown, but he could turn the class on and get them interested. And I really loved that guy. You know, working with him was fantastic. And he had me taking physics, advanced physics, and he actually got the school district to let him start a rudimentary nuclear physics course,
Nice.
and got me in that, and got me into math. I mean, I couldn't even spell algebra, and he had me taking differential calc, you know, because the guy was a major impact on me, but at that point in my life, not so much in formulating my
Right.
philosophy of life, you know. So he was a mentor of a short term, but he had a major impact on me.
Yeah. I I would say probably if we go chronologically, my next mentor would have been one of the managers at Domino's Pizza of all places. I took a job there delivering pizzas shortly after our daughter was born because, you know, we needed food. And I ended up paired up with one of the managers. And he's where I first got my introduction to marketing and how you could market effectively to people who everybody else would ignore. We would take over, he and I got moved around to a lot of different stores as a team because we could take a store that was losing money and turn it into a moneymaker in about 3 months and then move on to the next store that was losing money. And it was all in how we approached the marketing of the store and the behavior and the training and all of that. And he got me really focused on looking at things from as many different angles as possible when it came to audiences and engagement and marketing. And it was all just to sell pizza. Timing, you know, how you timed your marketing became a huge deal. It didn't do you any good to send out, you know, coupons for, you know, discounted pizza, you know, 3/4 of the way through the month because so many people didn't have any money at the end of the month. So you send out your coupons on the first week of the month when everybody has all their money. Um, so I mean, there were a lot of really interesting marketing and training style things that we learned, you know, that I learned from him that gave me the impression, along with another business owner that I've worked with years later, Bob Close over at Images Jewelers, where it was all about training. Do we spend our time? Did we just lose your video? Um,
Yeah,
we
weak connection.
ah, we spend all the time. You know, if you're running your business and your staff is not successful, it's rarely because your staff sucks. It's almost always because you didn't give them the tools to succeed. And between Steve and Bob, those issues were hammered in my dad as well when he had his businesses. You know, it was all about teaching everybody how to do their job, giving them the tools they needed to do their job. And that's really shaped how I try to run my businesses going forward is, you know, if somebody, you know, if I hire somebody to do a job and they can't do it, it's mostly my fault for not making sure they had what they needed to do the job. Um, so that's always been a real key, and I've tried to explain that and share that information with an awful lot of people over the years who were also starting their own businesses and trying to develop their own brand awareness and business, you know, culture and whatever. And so putting that in there became real important to me and became one of the reasons why I try not to hire a whole lot of people anymore either, because it does take a lot of time to make sure people are going to be successful. And I'm beyond that stage where I want to have lots of employees and run a large agency again. I'll pass.
Yeah. No, but I would imagine that too is very hard to instill in your subordinate managers and supervisors, getting people to accept the
Yeah,
fact that if their people aren't performing, it's probably their fault, not their people's.
exactly.
You know, because that's a pretty radical departure from the typical American employment culture. You know,
Well,
if you can't do the job, there's 100 guys out there on the curb that can.
yeah,
You know.
one of my favorite examples was back when I was at Domino's, and one of the supervisors came in and was throwing a fit because I paid my staff so much more than anybody else paid theirs. I mean, to the effect of $2 to $3 an hour more than the stores right next to me. And he couldn't understand why. He's like, you'd make so much more money if you didn't pay them so much. And it's trying to convince him and get him to understand that the reason we made so much money was because we paid them so much. And to show him, I took my keys out of my pocket, tossed them into the crowd, and said, whoever catches them runs the store for the next hour. And we went next door and had Chinese food. And when we came back, it was like I had never left, because the store was capable of running itself because we taught everybody how to do every single thing that needed to be done. And they just did it. And I could run my store with half as many people. And it's a great way to make money is if you just don't need as many people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Good philosophy.
yeah, it's done well for me over the years.
My next one, I'm going to skip the one guy that I had thought of mentioning because he ended up being a good friend and he certainly gave me a lot of guidance, but I kind of hesitate to say he was a mentor. But this guy was, Bob Adams. He was the president of a company I worked at years ago, AB Plastics. They were a custom injection molder. They made like 90% of the monitor and television housings for Sony.
Okay.
I mean, they were a pretty good sized company. They started out in 1923, and they ended up selling out to a new investor in, I'm going to say, 96 or 7, who promptly drove them into the ground and bankrupted. But Bob was the president. He and his brother Jim would trade off, and Bob would be president for a couple of years, and Jim would be VP, and they'd swap, and they went back and forth. And when I got there, Bob was the president, and shortly after I got there, they swapped, and he became the VP. But he always ran ops. Production was his baby, and he was the hardest driving guy I've ever worked for in my life. Demanding wouldn't even begin to describe him. I mean, if he said he needed 20 of these things done in 30 minutes, he expected 30 of them in 20 minutes. You know,
Yeah.
And if you came to him and gave him what he asked for, it was like that's the best you could do. He always expected you to do better and more and higher quality. And God help you if you ever made the mistake that I made only once when something didn't go according to plan. Don't offer excuses. Because he raked me over the coals, and I'd never made that mistake again. But I learned so much from him. He was about 6'7", weighed about 240. He was a scrapper. I mean, he just as soon knock you down and let you count your teeth as look at you.
Mm-hmm.
But and at one point in time, before I got there, he had been a heavy drinker, and he would go brawling out there on the floor, a scrap pile too tall or something. You know, he'd just tear into him. These days he'd end up in jail, of course.
Yeah.
But Bob taught me a tremendous amount about dealing with both customers and subordinates that are trying to get more for doing less, and how to get the most out of people. And I really enjoyed working for him. Once I got over, initially, the first few months, I was scared shitless of him because he had a reputation for firing people at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. And we had one set to early on when I offered him that excuse because he had not given me some very good direction. And I did not take the initiative to go and ask some people what did he maybe really mean when he said this. So I ran with what I figured he probably meant, and I was way off base. So I came back at him with it. I said, well, you're the one that said you wanted this and that. If you wanted this, you should have said so. And, Katie barred the door.
Whoops.
But and he made me fire. I brought in a really good friend of mine to work for us who was a damn good mechanic. And he continued to be a good mechanic. But after we started following OSHA rules, Julio kept pushing his safety glasses up on top of his head and forgetting to bring them back down. And Bob caught him twice on the floor without him, called him on it. The second time he called him on, he came into my office and said, I just saw Soto out there without his safety glasses on. If there's ever a third time, they'll be following him out the door. And don't you know, it wasn't 2 days later before idiot put his glasses up on top of his head again and he's out of here. He didn't fire him, he made me fire him.
Well, of course. That's what your job was.
But it was my job,
Yeah.
But I got a lot out of working with Bob, and he one day I watched him. We were up in the front office. He went into John, and he came out and said, "Give me your keys." I tossed him the keys to my company car. He hauled ass, jumped in the car, and squealed out of the parking lot. Come to find out, he'd gone in there, take a crap, passed a bunch of blood, went to the emergency room, and 2.5 weeks later he was dead.
Wow.
I mean, that fast.
That's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it was quick.
Well,
anyhow, he definitely had an impact on it.
Is I want to go back and hit Bob close one more time. Out of all the people that I felt were mentors in my life, he's the last one that whenever I catch myself in the area, I still make sure I stop in and say hi, at least a little bit. Because Bob built this wonderful jewelry business in a little town in northern Indiana that you wouldn't expect to produce the quality and the value and the expense of some of the stuff that they created over the years. And he's the one that really, on top of Steve, hammered home the training. He would every year spend money to send all the staff to different training sessions, different seminars, conferences. He sent me halfway across the country shortly after I started working there. As a jewelry designer, I was designing really neat jewelry, but some of it couldn't be built because I didn't understand. I understood the lines and the flow and the design aspect, but I didn't understand was the construction. So he sent me halfway across the country to take a 3-week jewelry making class. And he didn't have to do that, but it made me better at what I did and made him more money in the end because I was better at my job. We didn't have to go over and spend more time doing things. And he also gave me a real firm understanding of business and business priorities. It basically came down to family first, business second, employees third, competition somewhere 10th or 11th. He just simply did not care what his competition was doing ever, because he just assumed that as long as he was doing absolutely the best thing he could possibly do, nothing they did could affect what he was doing, because first of all, he's already doing the best he could do. There is nothing left above that. So even if they were doing something better than him, he couldn't beat it because he's already doing his best. But the other thing is, if the more time you spend watching what your competitors are doing, the less time you spend watching what you're doing. And it was a lot of mental overhead that's not worth paying attention to. I don't see it so much in the marketing business. I mean, we pay attention to what our competitors are doing, but we don't get into it like a lot of retail businesses get, or fast food, for example, where they just absolutely cut each other's throat every chance they get as a way to get ahead, rather than focusing on being absolutely the best they can be at what they do. And that's where we kind of came up with that whole expertise and authority mantra when it comes to helping clients build their businesses. If you're an expert in the field, you're the authority in the field, people are going to automatically trust you. You don't need anything else after that. And that's where
Yeah.
I got that belief and following, that philosophy from. And I still, I'm heading up north to help the factory up there get set up here in a couple weeks, helping them do their internal processes and get them on, started off on the right foot before they get too big. And while I'm up there, I'm going to make a special side trip to make sure I go over and spend half a day with Bob and go grab some lunch and just see how life is going, because he's always a lot
Cool.
of fun to talk to. So those
You
are my
know,
biggest mentors.
something. Yeah. I think what's interesting is, when you ask somebody who's your mentor, or who have been your mentors, most of us, if assuming we've been fortunate enough to have one or more, we can name them.
Yeah.
We probably even recognize it at the time that, I'm learning a lot from working with this guy. Maybe we never put the word mentor to the relationship, but
Right.
but if somebody asked us who's your mentor, we would immediately connect them
Right.
with that description. But I think very, very rarely does the individual who is acting as a mentor see himself in that role.
Right.
It's just, you've got some protege, you've got some coworker, you've got some employee that you see some potential in, you're helping them develop.
Yeah.
You love the fact that they're showing some initiative, but you don't see yourself as a mentor. And to me, a mentor is a little more than just training somebody, giving them the additional tools.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of implies that you're embedding some values, some philosophy
Right.
in the way that they're going to do their job or live their life going forward. But I don't think many mentors ever see themselves at the time.
Yeah.
And because I've talked to some that people have said, well, he was my mentor. And the guy just, what? Me?
Exactly.
They have a difficult time even accepting it after the fact.
Right. And it's funny because then you see online where people offer, online mentorships for, 500 a month or 1,000 a month or 2,000 a month. And I can't fathom charging somebody to be their mentor. That just, it flies contrary to everything I believe. And I mean, I can understand business coaching maybe, but I don't see how you can have the personal bandwidth to be as involved as you need to be with an individual to give them to impart that kind of value and information to them, especially not when you're doing a couple of minutes here, an email there, a phone call here. I don't see it. I've tried really hard over the years.
Say we're going to have 2 30-minute calls per week and 1 2-hour call per month. That's not a mentorship. That's a business arrangement.
Yeah,
that's counseling.
That's counseling.
Guidance.
That's business consulting is more what I would qualify that as consultant. But on the other side of that coin, there are an awful lot of people who have had an impact on my life. Maybe not to the level of being considered a mentor, but there's still a lot of people today that, when I've got, especially certain work issues as far as just the inspiration to go to work, because there are days where I used to be, I couldn't wait to get up and go to work every day. I don't, that doesn't happen every day anymore. I've got other things on my plate that I want to do, but there are people I know that I have close relationships with that chatting with them for an hour or a half hour helps me get that little spark going again, and I take that from them gladly. Hopefully at some point I can return the favor to somebody, and that's kind of what I do, why I do what I do, and why I spent so much time on the forums even after the forums went to shit. I stuck around for a long time trying to give back as a way of repaying all the people that gave to me to help me out when I was starting out. So, but
yeah, I call that you can't pay somebody back, but you can pay it forward.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, we should probably cut this short. If you guys have mentors of your own that have been really influential in your lives over the years, why don't you shoot a quick video of them, or a video explaining how they influenced you and helped you with your life and your business or family life or whatever. Tag us. Let's see if we can't build a whole chain of videos of people who have had a positive effect on your lives, and then we can share them with everybody and see if we can't keep the ball rolling.
Hey, we'll see
All
you
right.
again hopefully
Well,
next week.
Hopefully we'll get back on a weekly schedule now that life is calming down. Have a great week,